On October 26, 1909, at 9:06 in the morning, a train arrived at Harbin Station in Manchuria. On board was Itō Hirobumi, one of the most powerful men in East Asia. He had been Japan's first prime minister, the architect of Japan's modern constitution, and most recently, the first resident general of Korea. He was 70 years old, and he was meeting with the Russian finance minister. The platform was lined with Russian honor guards. A crowd had gathered. Itō stepped off the train. A man in the crowd moved forward. He raised a pistol and fired 3 shots. All 3 hit. Itō Hirobumi was struck in the chest, the side, and the abdomen. He was carried back onto the train. He died 30 minutes later. The shooter stood completely still after the 3rd shot. He raised his hand, not to flee, not to fight, and shouted in Korean 3 times, "Daehan Dongnip Manse." Long live Korean independence. Then he allowed himself to be arrested. His name was Ahn Jung-geun. He was 31 years old. He had come to Harbin specifically to do this. Ahn Jung-geun was born in 1879 in what is now Hwanghae Province, in what was then Joseon, Korea. Korea in 1879 was a kingdom under sustained pressure. Japan, rapidly industrializing after the Meiji Restoration of 1868, had already imposed its first unequal treaty on Korea in 1876. China's influence over Korea was being challenged. Russia was expanding eastward. Korea was caught between empires. Ahn's family was Catholic, his father had converted, and Ahn was baptized with the Catholic name Thomas. He received both traditional Confucian education and exposure to Western ideas through the local Catholic community. He grew up watching his country lose control of itself. The First Sino-Japanese War of 1894 to 1895 pushed China out of Korea's political orbit. The Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905 ended with Japan dominant on the peninsula. The Eulsa Treaty of 1905, signed under Japanese military pressure, with some Korean signatories later claiming they signed under coercion, turned Korea into a Japanese protectorate. Korea could no longer conduct its own foreign policy. Japanese advisors were embedded in the Korean government. Itō Hirobumi became the first resident general, effectively the governor of Korea, while the Korean emperor remained as a ceremonial figure. Ahn Jung-geun was 26 years old when this happened. Ahn Jung-geun did not become an assassin immediately. He tried other things first. He attempted to establish schools in Korea, educational resistance, building institutions that could strengthen Korean identity and capability. He spent his family's money on this and went into debt. He moved to Shanghai. He considered emigration as a form of resistance. He returned. In 1907, the Korean emperor tried to send secret envoys to the Hague Peace Conference to plead Korea's case to the international community. Japan found out. The emperor was forced to abdicate. His son was placed on the throne. That same year, the Korean army was disbanded. Something in Ahn's calculation changed. He joined the Righteous Army movement. The Wibyong, irregular Korean fighters who were engaging Japanese forces in guerrilla resistance. He rose to a command position. He led raids and engagements. The armed resistance was not succeeding. The Japanese military was too organized and too large. The Uibyong were being suppressed. In early 1909, Ahn Jung-geun was in Vladivostok, in the Russian Far East. A significant Korean exile community existed there. He formed a small group with 2 other Korean resistance members. Together, they made a pact. They cut off the tips of their ring fingers as a blood oath and wrote Korean independence in their blood. The target was already in mind. Itō Hirobumi was not just any Japanese official. He was arguably the most significant figure in the Japanese establishment of that era. 4 times Prime Minister. The man who had drafted Japan's Meiji Constitution. The man who had negotiated the Treaty of Shimonoseki after the Sino-Japanese War. The man who had personally managed the process of turning Korea into a protectorate. He was also, paradoxically, someone who had internal doubts about how aggressively Japan was moving in Korea. Some historical evidence suggests Itō favored a more gradual approach to Japanese dominance over Korea than the hardliners within Japan's military and political establishment. Ahn Jung-geun either did not know this or did not believe it. His written statement, compiled later, listed 15 specific charges against Itō, from forcing the abdication of the Korean emperor to undermining peace in East Asia. Ahn framed the assassination not as an act of Korean nationalism alone, but as an act in defense of peace in the entire region. He was, in his own understanding, not a murderer. He was a soldier executing a military action against an enemy officer. The interrogation and trial took place in Lushun, Port Arthur, a city then controlled by Japan after the Russo-Japanese War. Ahn Jung-geun conducted himself throughout in a manner that surprised his captors. He was educated, articulate, and calm. He engaged his Japanese interrogators in philosophical discussion. He did not recant or minimize what he had done. He explained his reasoning in detail and asked formally to be treated as a prisoner of war under international law. Because he considered himself a soldier who had fought an enemy officer, not a criminal who had committed murder. The request was denied. During his months in custody, he wrote extensively. He produced hundreds of pieces of calligraphy, enough that guards and officials began asking for them as keepsakes. One of his most famous inscriptions, "A day without learning is a day with thorns growing in your mouth." Another, "The will to pursue what is right must be as strong as the pine in winter." He also began writing a major work, a discourse on peace in East Asia, that argued for a cooperative community among Korea, China, and Japan, united against Western imperialism. He never finished it. He was executed before he could. Ahn Jung-geun was found guilty and sentenced to death. He was offered a chance to appeal. He declined. An appeal would have delayed the process while doing nothing to change the outcome. And he had said what he had to say. He asked to be executed as a military prisoner, in uniform by firing squad. This request was also denied. He was hanged on March the 26th, 1910. 6 months later, Japan formally annexed Korea. The country he had died trying to save ceased to exist as a sovereign state. His mother sent a message. "Do not ask them to return your body. You died for justice, and you should be buried in a foreign land, rather than dishonor yourself by asking for comfort." His body was buried at the prison. The Japanese authorities did not reveal the exact location. To this day, Ahn Jung-geun's remains have not been found. The question haunts the story. Ahn Jung-geun killed one of the most powerful Japanese officials of the era. He made headlines around the world. He articulated, in testimony and writing that was preserved and translated, a case for Korean sovereignty and East Asian self-determination that was decades ahead of its time. But Korea was annexed anyway. The assassination did not stop or significantly delay it. If anything, some historians argue it accelerated the process. Japan moved to formalize annexation faster after the assassination, partly to assert control, and partly because it changed the calculation among some Japanese leaders about the risks of a prolonged protectorate. Itō himself had been more moderate than his successors. His replacement, a more hard-line official, pursued annexation more aggressively. So did Ahn Jung-geun's act change anything? In Korea, the answer is unambiguous. He is one of the most revered figures in Korean history. A museum in Seoul bears his name. His calligraphy is displayed in schools, and his life is part of the national curriculum. His image appears in public spaces throughout South Korea. In China, where the assassination took place in Manchuria, he is also celebrated as a symbol of resistance. In Japan, he is officially classified as a criminal. The facts of what he did are not disputed. What those facts mean is still argued. This is the Dragon Throne. 3 shots, one morning, in a train station in Manchuria. Whether it mattered? That is a question each generation answers for itself. Subscribe for more stories from Asian history. New episodes every week.